Hi, my name is Sensei Alex Kakio, and the title of today's talk is What to Do When There's Nothing We Can Do. But before we get into that, I'd like to remind you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, make sure you stick around to the end of this talk because I'll be making an announcement about my book, Perfectly Ordinary, Buddhist Teachings for Everyday Life, and when that will be available for purchase. So, I'll start today's talk by telling you a story about a monk who lived in a small temple out in the countryside. Now, the monk wasn't very smart, but he was very dedicated to his practice, and because of that, the villagers loved and respected him. And every day, he did his chanting, he did his meditation, he did home blessings for the villagers, and he lived a very quiet, very contented life. Until one day, a thief came to the village, and he stole money from lots of very important people. And when he was running away, he realized he needed a place to stash the money. So he went to the monk's temple while he was away doing a home blessing, and he stashed the gold and silver behind a Buddha statue. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the thief got caught, and not wanting to go to jail for what he'd done, he accused the monk of stealing the gold and silver, and told the villagers exactly where it could be found. Now remember, the monk was very dedicated to his practice, but he wasn't very intelligent, as opposed to the thief, who was not only very smart, but very charismatic. In fact, he was so smart and charismatic that it wasn't long until he convinced the villagers that the monk had indeed stolen the money. After all, they found it in his temple, right? So the monk was put on trial and he was found guilty. And the villagers didn't want to kill him for his crime, but they decided he couldn't stay there any longer, and his verdict was exile. He had to leave immediately. And when the monk was told this, he simply replied, "Is that so?" Smiled, packed up his things, and left. And he went to live and practice in a cave not too far from the villagers. And he lived there and he practiced just like he had at the temple for many years until the thief, hearing about the monk and hearing about his practice, felt guilty. And he went back to the town mayor and he confessed his crime. He confessed that he was the one who'd stole the money, not the monk. And the mayor of the town, when he heard this, was flabbergasted. He didn't know what to do. So he immediately ran to the cave where the monk was living, explained everything, and said, "You can come back to the village. You can go back to your temple." And the monk, upon hearing this, replied, "Is that so?" So then he packed up his things again, went back to his temple, and continued with his daily practice. The end. Now, I like telling this story because it's a little tricky. A lot of times, Buddhist practitioners think that the monk was so deeply realized and so disconnected from the world that he didn't care about his reputation. He didn't care about his temple. He didn't care about not being with his family or friends or being accused of a crime he didn't commit. He had no emotions. So he said, "Is that so?" and he left. And then when something good happened and he was allowed to return to the village, again, no emotions, just "Is that so?" and he went back to his temple. But that's not really true. And to understand why that's not true, we just need to make a small change to the story. What if instead of saying, "Is that so?" the monk said, "There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do." Now that changes things because it allows the monk to be human. And that's important because I personally, as a human being, have a hard time believing that he felt no emotions during all of this turmoil in his life. That he wasn't angry over being accused of a crime he didn't commit, that he didn't miss his family or friends, that he wasn't sad about having to leave his temple. I think he felt all of those emotions, and I think he was overjoyed when he got to go home, though he was probably a little annoyed that he had to go through all of this in the first place. But that statement, "There's nothing I can do," adds vulnerability to the story. And it's a good lesson for us because we are all been in these situations where there's nothing we can do, where we're accused of something we didn't do, but we're not believed, where we're minding our own business, but someone's not paying attention and they rear-end our car, where a family member mistreats us or a coworker doesn't come through on a project. And what do we do in those situations? What do we do when there's nothing we can do? Well, we follow the example of the monk. We rely on our practice because it's situations exactly like the one the monk was in. Situations like the one we're in every day. Those are the situations our practice are for. We don't meditate because life is easy, though life can become easier with practice. We meditate, we chant, we study sutras for the times when life are hard, for the times when we're exiled, for the times when we're sad, when we're lonely. That's when the practice really comes through for us, when it's an anchor in a windswept sea. So that's what the monk did. There was nothing he could do, so he kept practicing. And then, when there was something he could do, he did it. He went home, and then he continued to practice. And that's something we can all do every day in our daily lives. So that's a talk for today. I hope it was helpful. And now for the announcement. My book, Perfectly Ordinary, Buddhist Teachings for Everyday Life, will go on sale March 6, 2020. That's a Friday, about 2 weeks from now. It's going to be available on Amazon. And if you'd like to purchase that or just get an idea of what people are saying about it, I'll post a link in the description where you can read some of the early reviews. And I encourage you to keep an eye out. I'll be posting the pre-order link pretty soon at my website, The Same Old Zen. So again, Perfectly Ordinary, Buddhist Teachings for Everyday Life. I highly recommend it. But let's see. So if you'd like to read articles I've read about Buddhist practice, you can do that at my blog, The Same Old Zen, which is at sameoldzen.blogspot.com. You can also email me at sameoldzen@gmail.com. If you're watching this on Facebook or Twitter, please don't forget to share or retweet this post. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. And if you're watching this on YouTube, again, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. So that's it for today. Until next time. Amitabha.